Good evening, welcome in RNQ Easino classes, block number 2, Historicism. 2.1 Introduction. After the World War II, most of the intellectuals become disillusioned with humanity's scientific growth. The historical outlook affected many spheres of humanities and new disciplines like historical materialism, anthropological historicism, and so on. Embraced historicism, a popular school of thought in Germany by the 19th century. Looks at emerged in historicism, a popular school at the Germany by the 19th century. Looks at everything in terms of historical development, reacting against a normative view of knowledge and cognitions of the Enlightenment period. It argues that life and reality are and nothing but history, taking the cue from J.G. Hilder outlines of a philosophy of the history of man 1784, and G.W.H. Hegel's The Philosophy of History 1837. Historicism gives importance to the historical situatedness of each individual consequences, which is spared by socio-cultural contextuality, contingency, and perspective perspectival nature of our existence. Radical contingency is the distinguishing feature of human life. David Roberts maintained that our world can't be stable, centered, self-identical on the way that the metaphysical traditions led us to expect 1995, 199, and even if we manage to reach the levels of metaphysics of service of science, we are still within the framework of history and contingency. Popular names associated with this school of thought and Leopold von Ranke, William Dilthey, J.G. Drusen, Friedrich Manzix, Benedetto Croce, and R.G. Collingwood. The powerful critics of historicism are Friedrich Nietzsche, Walter Benjamin, Karl Popper, etc. However, Martin Heidegger, Edmund Husserl, and Hans Georg Gadamer engage themselves in a constructive approach to the whole ideas of historicism. The impact of historical outlook towards knowledge enterprise affected philosophy of science. It is also in the beginning of the 20th century. Logical positivists, members of the Vienna Circle, and logical empiricists like minded group from Berlin insisted that philosophy of science should be precise and rigorous, giving importance only to the logical and linguistic analysis of the scientific concepts and theories. Positivists like Carnap, Hampel, Reichenbach, Selig, Popper, etc. held scientists as little philosophers, incorporeal investigators who are maximally rational and worried about epistemological and ontological issues. Key 1999, but historians like Hansen, Feyerabend, Cohen, Lactose, etc. take the the logical positivists' view of science and to arrive at a picture that is more faithful to the actual historical developments and sociological factors of science. Insert one says Hume thought science was inductive and irrational. Proper thought it was non-inductive and rational, and Carnap thought it was inductive and rational. And it contrasts to then Cohen seems to argue that science is both non-inductive and non-rational. Lediman 2002 94 2.2 Historicious challenges to logical positivism. LP rationality of science. LP claims that science is rational because it strictly follows scientific method verifications of proper falsifications, but historicism argues that science is non-rational and there can be many methods in science. Cumulative growth science progress cumulative, where the latter theories are the betterment of the previous ones with more empirical content. Such progress is not available in any other enterprise where knowledge grows only layer of sense, but for historicism growth in transformative and latter theories are not necessarily better than the previous ones. Objectivity in science is objective. Will historicism shows the science has got both subjective and subjective elements. Monopoly of truth. Science is storehouse of truth. Historicism challenged this and showed that other resources are also reliable. Reductionism of science. All science can be reduced to physics, as there is a single set of fundamental methods for all them. Historian does not agree with this, as there can be different methods for science, and reductionism becomes more conceptual with more growth in various domains of science. Superiority of science is theory. Scientific theories are superior to any other belief system, as science is immutable, but historicism argues that scientific theories do change, and there is nothing special about scientific dichotomy between the context of discovery and the context of justification. This distinction is very important because of hypothesis may arise out of any sort of personal or social consideration, but it has to be justified on the basis of observational evidence. The context out of which it emerges is not relevant to philosophy of science, as only its justification matters. But historicism, Dennis and any such justification. This distinction is very important because a hypothesis may arise out of any sort of personal or social consideration, but it has to be justified on this basis of observational evidence. To context out of which it emerges is not relevant to philosophy of science, as an only justification matters. But historicism, Denis Ennis's dichotomy, clear distinction between observational terms and theoretical terms. LP insist on the distinctions of observational terms and theoretical terms, and therapy observational and theoretical statements. Also, the observational themes can be traced to some sort of observational experiences. Well, there no such observational basis for theoretical terms. However, historicism denies this distinction because there is no pure observations, and all observations as theory laden. Welton's showing world view of the scientist. According to LP, the value system, the passion, prejudices, and the whole world view of scientists have no role in science, since the scientists remain above all these elements. Historicism clearly shows that the well well-transferring of the scientist has a critical role to play in the science by coloring and controlling the process of science. Well, Tan Song can be understood as the totality of background, upbringing, personal preferences, prejudices, and expectations, etc. of the science. Role of history in philosophy of science. For LP, history of science is not necessary to do philosophy of science. Will for historicism, history of science is important to do philosophy of science because historical factors do play an important role in having an adequate picture of science. 2.3 Thomas Samuel Cohen, 1922 to 96 in Science a Social Enterprise. Cohen is given the credit of bringing historicism in the philosophy of science. He received his PhD theoretical physics from Harvard University in 1949. Soon he became interested in the history of science. His world-shattering work, The Structure of Scientific Revelations (SSR) in 1962 evoked controversial discussions in extremely diverse fields. It has been translated into 20 languages. In 1956, he joined the University of California at Berkeley. He moved on to Princeton University and later to MIT. He suffered from blood cancer and he died rather young in 1996. Some of his papers both on the history and the philosophy of science are given in the Essential Tense in 1977. His ideas can be seen in two broad categories: early Cohen and later Cohen, focusing on the important Cohen concepts like paradigm, incommensurability, and theory choice. Early Cohen till late 1917. Science, a circle of normal science of revelatory science. Science is basically a long period of normal science, occasionally interpreted by crises which lead to short periods of revelatory science in the normal science period. The main preoccupations is puzzle solving activity. All scientists work as collaborators, not as inventors, applying the known solutions to the problems at hand. When the existing theories get into conflict with the phrase observational data anomalies arises and mostly anomalies are overlooked. A normal scientist must learn to ignore them or else he can't carry on with her research. The scientist who persists to examine every anomaly he notes will seldom get significant work done. Cohen 1962-82. But when anomalies grow too many and too strong to tolerate, a crisis sets in, leading to a revelation where a new paradigm is chosen, one that is accepted. Again, another period of normal science starts until anomalies appear, which should ultimately lead to the revelation. Paradigm, a primary concept. Paradigm is almost synonymous with a scientific community, ensuring both the logical and physiological closeness. It is a sort of the world of view of the community. Example as Aristotelian physics, Copernican astronomy. Copernican astronomy, Newtonian physics, Ptolemaic astronomy, the phlogiston, and the oxygen theories of combustion, the caloric theory of that, heat practical physics, quantum physics. Paradigms are constructive of science. Each paradigm has its own problems, its solution methodology. It binds the scientist so deeply that the scientists belonging the different paradigms disagree about what is a problem and what is a solution. They will inevitably talk through each other when debating the relative merits of their respective paradigms. Cohen 170 to 109. Paradigms are constitutive of meaning. Paradigms determine the meanings of the terms used in scientific theories. Final paradigms are constitutive of subject matter of discourse. Within a paradigm, there is a strong consensus thinking. Cohen demands a very strict adherence to the paradigm on the part of the scientists. They would do anything to be faithful to it, even in the face of contradictory evidence. Lady Man 2002 19 119 note with कौन सा फेंकना है? क्या फेंकना है?
फेंका नहीं।
लो तेरे फीले बीचे incommensurable. During revolutionary period, scientists suffer from incommensurability, that is communication breakdown in arises due to the rejections of an old theory of changes in the problem field the standards of solutions, even some of basic scientific concepts. The scientists from both Aristotelian paradigm and the Copernican paradigm may speak of the center of the universe, but they mean different realities. For the former mean the earth, while the latter the sun, which are apart by 150 million chemists. Cohen says that there is no way in which the communication breakdown can be bridged because the interpreter will have to live in two worlds and he will end up in mental asylum. The essential tension, there is a tension is a scientist essentially needs flexibility and open mindedness to progress, but at the same time convergent thinking and the rootedness in the given tradition is also needed. Only investigations firmly rooted in the contemporary scientific traditions are likely to break that tradition and given rise to a new one. Cohen 1977 p227 as the convergent thinking is installed in the Freud's mind through the students' textbooks. It is very difficult to be innovative as that would go against paradigms. Edwin Hugg's analogy of railway tracks, the rails in one sense constrain the movements of the train but in doing so guide it smoothly in a definite direction. Hung 1997 358 being an atheistic innovator and a faithful traditionalist at the same time is preciously as Cohen puts in the essential tension. Later Cohen early 1980s onwards. In the latter part of Cohen's career there is a shift to the language considerations of science form. The essays in the broad science structure collections of these essays produced between 1970 the 1993 published posthumously in 2000, we learned the four fundamental themes emerging out. Cohen 2001 to 9 sends the undoubtedly a cognitive empirical investigations of nature endowed with a special sort of progress, but this progress is not towards the fullness of truth, but progress is in ever improving technical puzzle solving ability. Science is basically a social enterprise where the scientists work within the community and only occasionally they move out of it to find solutions for certain anomalies, modifying the earlier notion of scientific. सर कल से कोई मिस्टेक नहीं होगा मेरा, कल से कोई मिस्टेक नहीं होगा, अच्छे से काम करूंगी पक्का। ओके
क्या बोल रहे हो?
मैं बोल रही हूँ कल से कोई मिस्टेक नहीं होगा, अच्छे से काम करूंगी।
तुम्हारा एवरीडे
नहीं, कल आपको कोई कंप्लेंट नहीं आएगा, मतलब कुछ बोलने का मौका नहीं दूंगी कल तुम्हें मैं। कल मैं भी हैंडल करूंगी सारा, कल से। Like the biological evolution of species of Darwin's theory into two distinct traditions with somewhat different areas of research, and finally I will distinguishes between commensurable languages where translation is possible between two languages and therefore what is said in one language can be said in another, and incommensurably languages where only paragraphing is possible between the language, giving a linguistic twist to the understanding of incommensurability. Theory choice in science. When scientists decide from various theories, Cohen argues that they don't go by rational and epistemic considerations. There is no neutral algorithm and systematic procedure for the choice, which takes place not only by the shared or objective criteria but also by adversarial factors dependent on individual biography and personality. Kuhan 2002-429. The non-epistemic factors are also of philosophical importance. Kuhan identifies five among many other important characteristics of a good scientific theory: accuracy, consistency, scope, simplicity, and fruitfulness of the theory. He thinks that they are individually important and collectively sufficiently varied to make a good choice. Each creative discipline is characterized, among other things, by different sets of shared values. Cohen prefers to call the shared criteria as values rather than rules. Along with these values, there are many personal or subjective criteria shaping theory choice. One's previous experience as a scientist, durations of a research, extra scientific perceptions like philosophical, religious convictions, one's personal preference. For instance, one many prefer originality to coherence and therefore readiness for risk, will another may be for vice versa and end up not taking risk. Thus, an adoption of the theory can't be regarded as conscious choice on the part of that person. So declares Cohen no process quite like choice has occurred, but they are practicing that new theory, not non-athletes 2002 3 436. Emphasis mind proper and Cohen. Cohen in his paper Logic of Discovery of Physiology of Research 1997 compares and contrasts his views with those of Proper. Some of the commonalities between them both focus on the dynamic nature of science rather than the strict logical structure of science. Both give equal importance to facts and the spirit of actual scientific life, and thereby turning to the actual history of science and resulting in similar conclusions. Both emphasize the revelatory process of scientific growth. Both reject the cumulative growth of science. Both of them seriously doubt the possibility of any natural observation language. Both agree that the aim of scientists is arrive to at explain into theories. And finally, both of them give up importance to the concept of traditions and the enterprise of scientific knowledge. However, there are also dissimilarities between them. Proper makes falsifications a regular frequent occurrence, while Cohen sees the need for this only at revelatory periods, which occasionally take place. Cohen idea of normal science, where most part of the actual science lies, is missing in proper framework. A beginner in science is primarily
जेनिफर आई
trained.
थी क्या आज?
हाँ, गई भी to work in normal science, not to throw away the existing theories outright. Cohen does not agree with proper sharp
किधर
dictionary.
आई है जेनिफर?
जेनी की जेनिफर
जेनिफर
नहीं देखी हूँ मैं तो आज उसको मैं नहीं देखी हूँ कौन between context of discovery and context of justifications for proper the method of science is the method of falsifications, and Cohen sees no such single method, and for proper science is an inductive and rational, while the Cohen sense is non-inductive and non-rational. Remarks logically and philosophically, Cohen's ideas may not be very attractive, yet they are very persuasive. In Cohen's scheme, paradigm are very important concepts, but unfortunately there is no clear understanding of it. Cohen is vague, is inconsistent with regard to the use of paradigm. Masterman enlists 21 various views of the world, or in Cohen's 1962 editions of essays. Also, it is not clear about the nature of the influence of the paradigms, whether physiological or logical. Upon its members, Cohen side of theory choice abuses that idea that science is guided by scientific method. Given this idea, Lactotus levels Cohen science as a matter of a mob physiology. Lactose 1970 and Ivy Cohen has been strongly criticized for his incommensurability. Is it likely to land science in irrationality and relativism? Kuhan at the second phase prefers to look at incommensurability metaphysically and in terms of linguistic. With the change of theories, not all the terms change in their meaning. Will most of the meanings remain the same? Only some of the terms change in their meaning. The terms that preserve their meanings are OSS across a theory change. Syscon provide a sufficient basis for the discussion of differences and for comparisons relevant to theory choice. Quant's 2036 and therefore incommensurability, thus equality on transferability. Cohen 1990 to 99. Since there aren't been a perfect translation among scientists, there is no side by side or point to point comparison. A scientist has to learn from scratch as a learner of a new language does. 1975-36 against the conditions of meaning invariance. He maintains that contextual theory of meaning, by which meaning of a term in a theory is determined by the context in which it occurs. For example, gravity was understood as physical force in the Newton theory of gravitation, while theory of relativity treats it as geometrical force. This meaning variance expect is to incommensurability. A strong vision of incommensurability to competing theories and incommensurable no common standard to evaluate their merit is. Posit visits argued that with the use of statements of purely observational language, uncont- uncontaminated by theoretical preconceptions, one can compare to theories. But science, there is no pure observation, and the meaning of the observation terms of theory is embedded in the theory. Two theories can never be compared. This fact is incommensurability leads to strict subjectivity in the realm of theory choice. Since theory is no logical way of comparing various theories, we are left only with the aesthetic judgment of taste, metaphysical prejudice, and religious desires. In short, what remains are our subjective wishes. 1975 to 85. Thus the notions of incommensurability snakes out the claims rationality in science. Feyerabend, a great humanist, Feyerabend cautions humanity not to be carried away by scientism. The tendency of absolutized science to ignore science is irrational. Similarity of absolutized science is equally irrational. Being taken up by one-sided growth of science, lot of harm is done to humanity and environment, and therefore humanity is to be liberated from the clutches of science. Liberated from the clutches of science. Throughout his life, he voiced out his deep concerns for humanity and its liability in politics, science, and in all intellectual pursuits. This is why he wanted the world to remember him basically as a simple and ordinary human being who valued love the most. He wrote in his autobiography on 11 February 1994, just a couple of weeks before his demise. My concern is that after my departure, something remains of me, not purpose, not final, not philosophical declarations, but love. This is what I would like to happen, not intellectual survival, but the survival of love. 1995 181 remarks. There are mixed reactions about Faridaban's contributions. On the one hand, people like Gonzalo Munevar 1991 declares Faridaban to be most important thinker of the 20th century. While on the other, there are people to call him a playful and childish thinker who allows anything to go. Sacha Delvich 1991 Farida Band is against only the traditional understanding of rationality, which ignores subjective or rhetorical elements, rhetorical elements like judgment, emotions, injections, reasonableness, etc. But he makes it clear that all these are essential components of scientific progress. It is encouraging to see that the does not reject metaphysics as meaninglessness. Not only the theoretical terms, but even the observational terms need theoretical background to understand As Newton Smith has it, it is not that our observational judgments may have an ideological component. Our observational judgments have no components that are not ideological. 1996, 139. That is why Faridabad is also comment that a good empiricist must be critical. Metaphysicians, 1998 to 1944. True big scientists have produced very important theories by violating the well-precised rules of their times, and all scientists are not always rational in all the matters, but only a few that two and trendsetters of modern science fit Farida Band's descriptions. As London says it is not scientific challenge he is describing, rather the figures he is writing about love always been considered as the folk heroes of our scientific culture. London 1989 302, like Kepler, Copernicus, Galileo, and Einstein, who come across a persistent character cheaters in the game of science, as they always seem to go inductively, just not bothering about even the glaring falsifying evidence. Violations of rule is only an exception, and but to make this exceptions rule that science always progresses or has a progress that way is a far-fetched claim. Loudon's analogy, just because a few cases of cancer spontaneously got cured without any medications, can one say cancer does not need any treatment at all? Further, to move from the alleged failure of two or three methodological rules to the presumptions that all methodologies are hopeless is to engage in just that sort of never inductivism about which he is otherwise so abusive. Lardon 1989 305 306. The Faridabad's ideas of strong incommensurability is also problematic. If two theories don't have any point of comparison at all, we will not even know that they are completely theory. As Sapir proposes the chain of reasoning connections between successive theories and the uses of terms in them, which help us to compare them all at successive stages. Some properties or the other of the terms are dropped or added for specific reasons. Spire 2001, 199, for instance, formed the times of Faraday of Thomson's shield day quantum theory. The idea of elections has changed greatly, but still be known that all these have been referring to something called election. The continuity and compatibility of the usage is not due to some common descriptions of common reference, rather a rationale for saying that they refer to the same thing. All along is given by the linkage or regions which gives continuity to the history. History happened in 1989 F to 429, and thus incommensurability can be sorted. 2.5. Norwood Russell Hanson 1924 to 67, champion of theory, ladness of observations. Maynard Hanson, an American philosopher, a versatile personality, a baseball player, a heavyweight boxer, and trumpet player, a daring fighter, plane pilot, and a creative writer in philosophy and history of science. Served as a Marine fighter during the World War. He had his studies in Chicago, Oxford, and Cambridge. He became the first university lecturer in philosophy of science. He has made significant contributions to the fields of philosophy of science, history of science, epistemology, and aerodynamics. His well-known work, Partners of Discovery in 1958, clearly argued for the theory Ladon's observational account is eventful. Life was tragically cursed by a plane crash on a mountain near Cortland, New York, with 10 of his books in progress. The relevance of the context of observation. Hansen challenges the views of logical positivism LP in his very important book, The Patterns of Discovery. patterns of discoveries, and they think only the context of justifications is important for philosophy of science. But Hanson argues that science or observations are theory laden. This distinction between the context can be very sharp. He explains it with an example. Kepler and Tycho Brahe watched the sunrises. Kepler believes in heliocentric universe, and Brahe believes in the geocentric universe. Do they see the same sun or different things? Traditional people would say, following the sensory core theory, that both see the same thing but inter, interpret it differently. But Hanson argues that both see two different things. For interpretations is part and parcel observations, and seeing already involves conceptions and theoretical frameworks. Framework 1967 to 4 to 5. Hansen explains this better with the examples employed with the Bayesian either investigations. For instance, for picture of dog rabbit of faces versus setting a picture as rabbit as seeing the same picture as a dog amounts to seeing two things. In seeing as such, there is no interpretations involved. The change from rabbit to dog takes place half fast and spontaneously. We change in the organizations of what one sees. The organizations is neither an element in the visual field nor appreciated, such as an appreciation involves theories. Thus, what we see is influenced by the theories. Behold, Hanson argues therefore that seeing is always seeing, and that is something depends on the background one has. Is not the eyes of the camera that see things, but the people see, and that they always see with background theories, and there is more to seeing than meets the eye. But Hanson 1993 341 causality is theory laden. Hanson denies a traditional metaphysical type of cause-effect relationship following Hume. Hanson says causal relations are physiological with the necessary connections between them. Causality is human way of understanding the functions of nature rather than a future of nature itself. We find causality of convenient tool of explain natural phenomena to simplify and facilitate inference. The causal connections are limited to rare and accidental happenings. Causes are found with effects not because of some cosmic cosmic bonds that keep them together, but because our theories connect them. Logic of discovery. After careful analysis of case studies in history of science, Hanson comes out with a pattern of discovery to solve a problem at hand. First, a workable hypothesis is proposed. This must fulfill some expectations, like a must have initial plausibility for solving the problem, be coherent with the existing background assumption. Logical and empirical methods of testing. So for him, logic of discovery is inferring novel hypotheses from problematic situations. He agrees that discovery of hypothesis involves genuity, creativity, insight, and imaginations. But along with these physiological factors, there are also some logical aspects involved in the process of proposing a particular hypothesis. There are some reasons to propose hypothesis rather than be testing a hypothesis different from plausibility of considerations which help us to decide whether to propose a few hypothesis or not. The plausibility is also determined based on same evidence, for instance, to explain the velocity of Mars. Kepler considered a non-circular orbit rather than taking into account the color of Mars, of the presence of the planets, etc. He rejected many such factors and decided upon the orbit of Mars as a placeable hypothesis to choose this one as a placeable one. He had some reasons, not just physiological factors. At the time of proposal, one can demand true hypothesis, but one can look for plausible conjectures. There is a distinction between reasons for accepting a hypothesis and reason for proposing the hypothesis in the first place. To show that the context of discovery is not purely ruled by physiological factors, and there are reasons to show why a particular hypothesis is considered worthy of testing. Following C.S. species, Hampson proposed logic of the adduction, which Investigators the norms used in checking whether a hypothesis is worth considering refers to the process of arriving at an explanatory hypothesis for a case of at hand with deduce P. Example, it has written from Q. Example, the ground is bad because P is sufficient or almost sufficient P but not necessary for Q, which describes these kinds of logical inference as guessing that comes prior to inductions and deduction. Remarks Hansen stirred a lot of controversy and debates in the philosophical and scientific critics through he could not gain discipline. He seems to be more interested in critiquing other rather than developing his own system of building thought out logical systems. If Hansen treats causality is more conjectures as him does, he has to answer all the objections raised against Hume, for instance, how to differentiate accidental conjunctions and more regular law-like relationships between cause and effect. Regarding the logic of discovery, he seems to have mistakenly completed plausibility arguments, which helps us to choose one for many available hypothesis with discovery as such. Further through it is meaningful to distinguish the plausibility considerations in proposing an hypothesis from a producer of confirming but it is not clear whether they are merely subjective prejudices and physiological belief of the scientist and whether or not they have any legitimate role in science. Through he gave us the patterns of scientific discoveries, he could not work out logic of discovery.